I'm so glad you're here. I have lots to tell you. A year ago, I had a VO2 Max test done that I didn't really know what to expect, but in the end, it changed all of my training zone, my heart rate training zones. This year, a few weeks ago, I went back and I had another VO2 Max test done, the full process and a little more. And my training zones changed again. I was not expecting that at all. I was able to have a follow-up conversation and interview with Dr. Jeff Zahavich, the exercise physiologist who did my tests both years. We are talking about fuel and energy sources and blood lactate levels, carbohydrates and fats, things that you don't need to know all the science, but you need to know the practical aspect of the science and how it applies to you when you're trying to plan for your future or plan a training program. This is part 2 of my series on VO2 Max. And in part 2, we are unpacking the results, not only of this year through the testing process, but comparing that to last year and getting such great explanation about why some things changed. And things did change only within a year. This video ended up being a little bit longer than I originally planned, and so there's a lot of information packed in here, but I'm trying to keep it simple for you. I've added chapters in the description below, so if you just hit that little where it says more below, you can see the chapters, and I'm breaking it down into sections, and you just click on the section that most interests you, and that'll take you right to that part in the video. However, of course, I think you should watch the entire thing from beginning to end, but your choice. I'm making it easier for you if you just want to watch bits and pieces of it. Before we get into all the detail, let's start with the very basics. How would you describe, like in the most simplest terms, what VO2 max actually means, what we're actually measuring?
So it's the rate of oxygen consumption. Or think about as you're exercising, you're taking air in and it has to go somewhere, right? So your body has to process that oxygen and then translate that or shift that back into some form of energy so that we can use that for exercise. So VO2 max is the maximum rate of oxygen consumption. So how much can we take in and then actually utilize? And so as intensity increases, so does our VO2 up to a certain point. And that's where we call our VO2 max.
You met Dr. Jeff in part 1, but just in case you haven't seen part 1 yet, here is a quick recap of why he is the guy doing the tests and he is the guy sitting in the chair as the expert, helping us navigate through the science and the practical application.
I have a PhD in health from Dalhousie University. And so my day job is I'm a senior instructor in kinesiology at Dalhousie, where I teach classes such as exercise testing and prescription for healthy populations. And starting this July, I'm actually taking a 12-month sabbatical where I'm building out a number of new courses and certification pathways. So that includes the CSEP clinical exercise physiologist designation. So that's kind of my professional title, if you will. I'm a CEP, clinical exercise physiologist. And that allows me to work with both athletic populations and also persons with chronic health conditions. So metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes, all those things that come with lifestyle related implications, if you will. And then the other certification is the Certified Strength and Conditioning Professional. So that's what allows me to get into the gym and work with those clients to build muscle and change those body composition markers, which depending on the order of this video will come later. So that's my professional role. And then I guess outside of that is I own a consulting company called Kinesic Sport Lab. Once upon a time in a past life, it used to be a brick and mortar facility where we would do physiology testing, coaching, training, and we primarily targeted kind of the recreational endurance athlete. So triathletes, cyclists, runners, skiers, swimmers. And then that kind of transitioned to the aging athletes, because as I started to get a little more involved in the community, I found that there was this whole cohort of folks like yourself that wanted to run and be active well into their late 40s, 50s, 60s, and even I was testing some runners in their 70s and 80s, which was pretty cool. And so the whole idea was there was a gap in terms of exercise science, research, metrics, analysis, conversations. And my goal is to make that information just more accessible to people like yourself that can really benefit from having access to that information.
So what did we actually test that day in the clinic?
We repeated the exact same test that we did a year ago,
Yep.
but we actually went a little bit further. So we did an additional 3-minute stage. So we started you at 4 miles per hour on the treadmill, and we brought you up all the way to 7.5 miles per hour. So we increased by half mile per hour every 3 minutes. And at the end of each stage, we took a small sample of blood from your fingertip, and that's what gave us the blood lactate concentration, and that's measured in millimoles per liter. And then we also collected your heart rate because you were wearing the Polar H10 sensor, and we collected gas exchange or oxygen consumption, and that was through the VO2 Master mask. So we were able to plot all that on this graph, and you can see that heart rate, VO2, and RPE all increased linearly. And that just means it was a straight line essentially. But you'll notice that the green, the blue, or the blood lactate increased exponentially.
Yeah.
So that means that it was kind of slow in the beginning and then a gradual increase. And then all of a sudden we reached this kind of essentially threshold. You've probably heard that term used many, many, many times. And then that's where it just kind of took off. So when you're sitting here at rest and you're not doing any real form of intense exercise, our body is utilizing fat as a primary fuel source, right? So that's why we have low resting blood lactate, because fat is our fuel source and there's no accumulation of lactate, and there's just no real metabolic byproducts showing up in our blood. However, as we start to increase in exercise intensity and our body shifts away from primarily fat as a fuel source into carbohydrate, the carbohydrate gets broken down in our system, in our liver. It gets utilized by it's like energy stores within our muscles. But as intensity increases, we start to see an increase in blood lactate because it's the carbohydrate that's being broken down. So as we shift from fat to carbohydrate in terms of fuel, in terms of energy systems, that's where we start to see that increase in lactate. Then we get into zone 3. We start to see an increase where there's an accumulation starting to build. And then once we get into like zone 4 or 5, we've kind of reached that tipping point, and then it takes off because our body cannot clear it out because we don't have enough oxygen coming in to be able to kind of bind with it, break it down, bring it back to the liver, and restart the whole process over again.
Yeah.
And so what we were really looking at throughout this whole process was, where does our body start to transition and shift more or less from one energy system into the next? And so basically, what's fueling your body to actually do this exercise? So we talk a lot about carbohydrates and fats. And so basically those kind of cut points or thresholds that we identified is where we start to see those shifts from one energy system into another. And I think the important thing is to remember that it's not just a flip of a switch. We're not turning one energy system on and another one turns off. It's just this transition. So your body's always using essentially all energy systems, and it's using all forms of fuel, but one becomes a little more dominant than the other. So there's like, depending on who you talk to in terms of coach or physiologist or biochemist, they're all going to use different terminology. And the terminology that I've kind of adapted is so zone 1, I call that active recovery, and that's just meant to be super easy stuff. Like that would be a 6 to 9 out of 20 on an RPE scale.
If you're not familiar with the RPE scale, you can see part 1 in this video series where we talk about it in a little bit more depth.
So even just standing here, where are we in terms of effort?
6,
Perfect. That's what we're looking for. And the idea there is that a 6 is super light. And so if you tell me that a 6 out of 20 is kind of where you're at, if we were to stick a 0 on the back of that 6 and make it a 60, that should be reflective of where your heart rate is.
Right.
And a 20 out of 20 at a 0, max effort, in theory, that would be like a heart rate of 200. But based on your test results, we only got you up to 172. And that's for a woman of your age and fitness level. And I'm 43, and I'm basically at the same kind of max heart rate that you are. So to
that makes me feel better.
Yeah, so max heart rate really has nothing to do with fitness level. It's more of a sex, age, genetic piece.
Yeah.
And so as we start to age, our max heart rate actually decreases,
Right.
just like VO2. But what makes it kind of relevant to the fitness is how can you actually achieve max heart rate? And going back to this test, when we think back to what we did on the treadmill, I think we actually got your RPE up to like 20 out of 20. So we could not have gone any further. Maybe 1 or 2 more beats.
Oh.
We're still at 19? 20? Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Straddle that out. See that figure?
And if we actually look at your test results from last year, I think we actually got you up to like 175 beats per minute.
I think it was 175 last year. Yeah.
Yeah. So we could have, in theory, squeezed out another couple. But it was hard at the end of the day.
It was oh my goodness. When I was done, like as I said to you afterwards, I think if I had gone any further, I was scared I would have thrown up. Like I was that done. And so
yeah.
And I wonder too, because this time we're doing the finger pick, the blood lactate level. I wonder, does that little 30-second break give have an impact on your heart rate too? Yeah.
Exactly. And so just to recap, we did 3-minute stages, and then I actually had you hop off the treadmill at 2.5 minutes. So we had 30 seconds where I was cleaning your finger with the alcohol, taking a sample, making sure that we actually collected the sample, and then I was getting you back on. So we were basically doing 2.5-minute intervals with 30 seconds rest is what we were doing.
Yep.
So we definitely saw a dip in the heart rate, a dip in the VO2, which is not ideal in terms of like taking this outside and comparing it, but that's just what happens in a physiology lab. Is it's not safe to be taking lactate from a finger while you're running, because I don't know, it could have stabbed you in the palm or whatever with the little lancet. We don't want to do that. So it was a good test. We collected some really great data, and this is where we're at. So we'll go through each stage. We'll talk about what the purpose of it is, and then we'll kind of bring it back to what we did, what we collected, where your numbers are, and then what do you do with that data going forward.
Okay, that sounds good. Yep. No worries. You're not supposed to be able to read this. This is the actual part of an actual report that I got as a result of the test, but we'll zoom in to different parts of this as we chat about them. Let's talk about the zones.
Okay, so zone 1, I call that active recovery. And so in terms of fuel contribution, that's where we have predominantly fat. So minimal carbohydrate is actually being utilized at this intensity. So the description reads, the easiest form of training, including warm-up, cool-down, light recovery between sets and interval workouts, also includes movement activation drills and technique-focused training sessions. So the purpose of this particular zone is not to increase heart rate. It's purely for muscle activation, turning them on. There's literally zero intensity involved with this. It's basically just light movement. So if you think about, you're at the track, you're doing 400s or 100s, you just finished a hard set, you just need to move to keep the blood moving to bring that heart rate down. That is essentially what zone 1 is. Super easy.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. Zone 2 is what I've dubbed aerobic threshold. And that's where we would expect to see a rate of perceived exertion between 10 and 12, and it's kind of dubbed as light.
Where are we at now?
Conversation is still pretty easy.
Okay. Bring up that next one. It's like 11?
Yeah, I think 11, 12, 11 and a half.
11 and a half?
primary fuel contribution, mostly fat with increasing carbohydrate distribution. Like a little bit, not a lot, still primarily fat.
Right.
And so what we've written here is long, slow distance, otherwise known as LSD, and not the drug type LSD, but long, slow distance. Training that improves fat metabolism and aerobic efficiency. Training at this intensity specifically targets the cardiovascular system, heart and lungs. So think like central, right? That's what we're working on.
Yep.
And enhances oxygen delivery to working muscles. So the more zone 2 we do, we're building that engine, that aerobic base. And that's super, super important for aerobic based athletes. And when I say aerobic base, that means like 3,000 meter and above.
Okay.
Because it's based on a timeline, right? So anything that's taking you at like the 2.5 minutes and higher, that's where we start to move into more of the aerobic athlete. And that's where they need to be doing a lot of zone 2 work. Okay.
Right. But even those sprinters and those elite fast athletes, they would still have to do zone 2 work, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Sprinters do less of it because it's also to do with like the timing and the firing of the musculature. So if you're a sprint distance athlete and you do a lot of long, slow distance stuff, you're also essentially training those muscles to just fire slower. So that's why it's important that they don't do a lot of it, but they also need to do a lot of it for recovery. So that could be in the pool, it could be on the bike, it could be doing other modes of aerobic exercise. And they still need to do it. It's important, but they also need to do a lot of anaerobic work.
Yep.
Okay?
Gotcha.
Zone 3 is where things get a little bit messy. So I've called that the sub-threshold or the cruise zone. And that's what we would call moderate intensity. Like if you're to go do a moderate effort run or a cruise run, it's not a tempo and it's not zone 2 easy. It's kind of in between land. And it's a transitional training zone that does not maximize either the aerobic or anaerobic adaptation. Therefore, it's often dubbed as the junk zone. However, it's useful for sustained efforts, pre-season base building, and long runs during taper periods. So there's a little bit of intensity, but not enough to like crush you.
I would say like 14.5.
14.5?
Because I'm starting to breathe through my nose now.
Okay.
I breathe through my nose.
The one thing that I've really kind of come 360 on is so zone 3 used to be really frowned upon.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Like the term junk zone, we don't even really use that anymore, because if you've got all the time in the world, absolutely 80% of your total training volume should be zone 2.
Yeah.
Right. But as we start to age and we don't necessarily have a lot of that time, and we got to focus on like, I've got 45 minutes today. What can I do that's going to maximize things? You're probably going to end up doing some zone 3 work, because zone 4 and higher hurts, and zone 2 isn't really feel like you're giving your body the run for its money, right?
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with doing zone 3 workouts. It's just if all of your workouts are zone 3, then we're not really addressing either or.
Right. You're not kind of building either one of the systems, that the aerobic or the anaerobic system. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you only have time to do a somewhat hard workout, do a zone 3 workout. There's nothing wrong with that.
Okay. That's good to know that the thinking is changing a little bit on that, because I always felt guilty when I would look at my watch and find myself smack in the middle of my zone 3 when I,
But that said, if your intention is to do a harder workout and you feel like you've got a little kind of left in the tank, then step on the gas a little, explore zone 4, see what it feels like to actually be uncomfortable.
Oh cool. I hate being uncomfortable.
Yeah. And so the primary fuel contribution for this particular zone would be a mix of fat and carbohydrate. And that's why it's neither aerobic or anaerobic. It's in between.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Yep.
All right. And then we move into zone 4. So this is where things getting a little bit hot and heavy. So we've got a 15 to 16 and a 20 in terms of RPE, and we would label this as hard. So it's predominantly carbohydrate. Tempo sessions and threshold training that improve the ability to sustain power and speed over time. These workouts typically cause discomfort until a steady state heart rate is reached, and proper warm up is absolutely essential because, again, we're putting a lot of demand on that musculature, and we need to make sure that things are firing and timing and tune with all the rest of your body. So my best
And
example here, oh, sorry, go for it.
no, I was just gonna say, in zone 4, is that synonymous with a tempo run?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, yeah,
yeah. Or also known as a threshold run.
yeah. Oh, yeah, it says tempo session right there. Yeah, and
Yeah.
so those are two terms that we see a lot. And until
Mhm.
last year, when I went through the VO2 testing with you the first time, that was always really confusing to me. So this, I love the clarity that comes with this.
Yeah.
That's great.
Some people might even call it race pace. But race pace is depending on what distance
Yeah.
of race you're doing. But
Yeah.
often whenever we say like a 5K race pace, that's where we would see this zone
Right.
4 threshold work. Or likewise, if someone ever said, okay, I want you to go do these intervals at half marathon race pace, that gets a little bit messy because is that zone 2 or zone 3?
Right.
And likewise, if someone said 10K race pace, well, that could also be zone 3 or zone 4. So it just depends on where your fitness is and where your comfort level is. But essentially, if you want to think of it this way, zone 2 is marathon pace. Zone 3 would be your half marathon and or 10K race pace. And zone 4 would be your 5K race pace. Caveat there is that that's depending on where you are in terms of training status and fitness and injury and all the other stuff.
Yeah. Makes
Okay.
perfect sense. Yes, that's good.
So moving into zone 5. So this is where things get pretty heavy. Okay. So this is also known as your VO2 max, or I've called it severe. Okay. So that would be a 17 to 19 at a 20, also called very hard. It's carbohydrate dominant, and it represents the transition into the severe intensity domain where physiological steady state is no longer possible.
We got 1 minute to go.
So training improves fatigue resistance, lactate tolerance, and high intensity endurance.
Where are we at?
19.
19?
Meaning, once you're there, you've got limited time. There is no
Right.
reaching steady state. You're basically you're burning matches at this point.
We talked a little bit about if there's anything after zone 5.
If you were to open up any heart rate based app, or your Garmin Connect or Polar or Coros or whatever device you've got on your wrist or on your phone, for the most part, they all use a zone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zones.
Right. Yep.
But on our chart, I've actually included a 6, but I don't call that zone 6. That's where we basically do our explosive intervals. And there's not really a heart rate attached to that as well. I just considered it max effort because let's say we're doing a 5 to 15 second max effort interval. Your heart rate doesn't actually reach that until after it's done because it's so short.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So if you're ever being coached or following a training program and it says like sprint intervals or really short high intensity, that's going to be 100% based on RPE because the heart rate response is so slow.
Oh my goodness, this is funny. So last summer, when I started to do what I called sprint intervals, like just to work on some speed work, I couldn't understand how I could never get my heart rate up to where it should be. But then, as you say, it was kind of in between, or maybe by the third or fourth one, my watch would show that I got up there, but not on the first two. And I kept thinking, I'm sure I'm going just as fast and working just as hard, but it wasn't showing in the heart rate. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So high intensity efforts designed to maximize oxygen uptake and aerobic power, typically performed as intervals with incomplete recovery. So again, I want you to go do 30 seconds on, maybe 30 seconds off. So 1-to-1 work to rest, and you're basically just driving yourself into the ground. And that's the idea, is that you're trying to build up as much fatigue and create as much lactate in the system so that your body can then get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
You can see the full video on my channel, Speed Work After 50, last year when I was trying to do some of these intervals. Okay, so let's see how this all compares to last year.
When we met up was a week or two ago, we were chatting at Cornerstone, and you were saying, I feel like I haven't had the most productive year of
Yeah.
training. And I will challenge you on that, because when you look at that report, there was a clear difference between your physiology this year compared to last year. So your heart rate response at any given speed was lower,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
everything shifted to the right, meaning we were able to push longer and faster. And as a result, we had a lower energy output, heart rate response for each of those stages. And that,
Right.
like, that's the pinnacle of training right there. We saw a training adaptation that's showing that even though we were 1 year older,
Yeah.
and yes, some of those workouts probably feel that much harder,
They
and for
do.
good reason, because you're
Yeah.
pushing yourself harder, which is
Yeah.
absolutely important.
Oh, well, that's good. Like, that was probably the biggest surprise to me, because as I said to you, I had a back issue that I did nothing for 3 months. I did, towards the end of that 3 months, I did a little bit of walking and stuff, but definitely no running. And I was sure things were going to be much worse. Yeah, it's just so interesting to, I don't know, just to see the ups and the downs. But what this shows me, and what I think I'm hearing from you, is like following the training, it is seeing some overall improvements despite my VO2 going down. I think last year was 44, this year was 42.9, maybe.
Yeah, so VO2
Yeah.
went down a little bit, not a
Yeah.
lot. And that could have been, we talked a little bit about your sleep quality the night
Right.
before.
Right.
Also has to do with the type of food you're consuming, the time
Yeah.
of day that we're testing. So even though we saw a little bit of a dip in VO2, plus we're 1 year older, so as we know, age isn't kind to VO2 and max heart rate.
Yeah.
But despite all that, we saw a decrease in effort and heart rate at every single stage of intensity throughout the test.
See, that's so interesting. And this is another point that when I thought I understood information, but obviously I didn't. So my first reaction was, when I looked at those zones, my new zones, or my new heart rate for each of the zones, I thought, what? If I'm getting fitter, why is my heart rate going up for each of these zones? And I
Because
think
that means you have to work harder, because you're going faster for each of those stages
yes.
or zones too, right?
Yes. Yeah. This is a look at my heart rate zones comparing the last 3 years. Important to note, though, in 2024, those were the numbers that I calculated based on some online calculations. 2025 was in the Cornerstone lab with Dr. Jeff, and 2026 was in the Cornerstone lab with Dr. Jeff. I guess I was thinking as you got fitter, your heart rate would go down in each of the zones, but is that
So your resting heart rate goes down.
right? The resting heart, but your
Right.
target heart rate for your zones.
Well, and it could go down depending on where you started. But in your case, because you've increased your fitness and your ability to push harder, faster, you actually have to work a little bit harder in each of those zones because you're going faster now. So to
Okay.
kind of put it in perspective,
Okay.
let's say your zone 2 used to be 6 minutes 30 seconds per kilometer. And I'm just making things up. But now let's say it's 6 minutes. So to go that much faster, you have to work that much harder. But as a result, it's actually taking you less energy.
Right.
Because
Right.
so because you're working in zone 2 essentially, like that lactate still is not accumulating, but you actually have to work harder now, which translates to working faster, moving faster to get that same physiological response as it relates back to lactate. because
Right.
heart rate's just a tool to get you there. That's what we're really looking at is the oxygen consumption, the ventilatory threshold. So that's the oxygen coming in, carbon dioxide going out, and then the lactate that we're sampling as well. Heart
Right.
rate's just the tool that we use to kind of gauge that.
This was such an aha moment for me. It took a bit to get me there. But yeah, I am thinking about these numbers very differently now. One of the questions was, who should have a VO2 max test? And is it something that just serious athletes should have? Or what is VO2 max testing used for and who should have it?
Yeah, so there's two pieces to that. One, there's been a lot of conversation in recent years around the whole longevity piece.
Mhm.
So the kind of the philosophy that I subscribe to is that your VO2 should be higher than your age for as long as possible, right? And so I'll use myself as an example. When I was an undergraduate student and I was doing a lot of exercise of various modes and types of intensity, my VO2 was 56. So I was
Wow.
fairly fit, not
Yeah.
by any means elite by any means, but 56. And so as a 23-year-old, I had a lot of room and time to grow and expand and live a healthy life. Fast forward, I'm now 43, soon to be 44, and I'm basically 10 years post any kind of, I don't even want to call it elite, but recreational training racing status because I've got 3 kids. And I recently tested and my VO2 is 48
Okay.
and I'm 44 soon.
So
So
it's
I need
still higher than your age.
still higher, but I'm getting close. So
Yeah.
I've got a sabbatical starting July 1st. It's a full 12 months and I have to make up for a decade of lost fitness. Because
Wow.
I need to get that VO2 back up to like 50 plus. That's my goal.
Okay.
Right? And so there's nothing wrong with being older than your VO2, right? You're not going to die.
Well, that's good to know because mine's not older than me, or mine's not higher than my age.
Yeah. So the again, going back to the whole longevity piece is that up to a certain point in your
Yeah.
life, it gets really difficult to increase your VO2. It just
Okay.
you've kind of reached a ceiling. And so at
Yeah.
that point, your goal should be to maintain VO2 because if you can't increase it and it decreases with age, you reach a certain point, and I think it's somewhere around 65 years of age,
Hmm.
where it's a landslide. Like you can build it, maintain it, but then you reach a certain age, and depending on what your health and fitness status is in the past life, your VO2 can either like slowly decline or it can quickly decline.
Oh, okay.
And so
Okay.
independence in terms of you being able to put your socks on, you being able to bathe yourself, go get groceries, live on your own as an
Yeah.
independent person, has direct ties to VO2.
Yeah.
So
I have seen I have seen some quotes in the last couple years about VO2 is one of the best indicators of longevity. Just exactly what aligns with what
yep,
you're saying, I think. Yeah. Yeah.
yep. And the other really good indicator is grip strength. So we've got a tool that we can actually like you
Yeah.
squeeze it as hard as you can, and it gives you a number. And so
Okay.
we often use that test in different like I do a lot of occupational fitness testing through like with fire departments and police and other kind of tactical emergency services. So
Mhm.
they use grip strength to give you an idea of overall upper body strength, but it also gives you a good indication of quality of life later on in your years as
Okay.
well.
Oh,
VO2 and grip strength are two of the most like critical numbers to know. So that
okay.
would be for like your non-athletic population. Okay, that's just
Right.
like benchmark quality of life, Do you need to start exercising now? Yes, everybody does, especially if you're
Yeah.
not exercising. So whether you decide to do a VO2 or not, start lifting weights and walking at a bare
Yeah.
minimum.
Yeah.
That absolutely needs to be prioritized. But from the athletic standpoint, it's not necessarily knowing your VO2, as we just kind of talked about. It's knowing your training zones. So if you are thinking about becoming more physically fit, how do you do that? And
Yeah.
if you're just kind of going out and guessing, like you're going to get on the bike and you're going to go for a walk or you're going to go ski or swim, that's great. But in order to make meaningful improvements, you should be trying to train those energy systems. So the long, slow
Yeah.
distance stuff, so that you're not accumulating lactate. We want to do that at a low enough intensity, and you need to know what those heart rate zones are to be able to do that.
Oh yeah, like the heart rate zones and these precise numbers, or I mean, I know they're not rigid or whatever, but these numbers are so helpful. And so with that, my VO2 max is this time was 42.9, definitely
Yep,
lower than my age.
yep.
So could
But
I?
you're lucky because you're still mobile, you're still active,
Yeah,
and you have the ability to increase that.
right. And that was going to be my next question. Like, will that just stay like that and then start to decline, or is there potential to actually increase that
Well,
at
it's
my age? Because I'm
yeah,
like
yeah.
58, almost 59.
I would say you have not reached your true potential yet, right? Like the fact that we're
Oh.
seeing improvements in fitness from the age of 57 to 58 or 58 to
Hmm.
59, whatever it is, we're seeing improvements. We saw that based on your previous test. Whether or not that comes out in VO2, we're going to see that in improvements in body composition,
Right.
muscle mass. So you're going to increase muscle mass and lose body fat. We're going to see it in changes in resting heart rate, as well as your ability to reach new max heart rates, as well as setting new personal bests if you're still choosing to race or run or do your activities, right?
Yeah.
So that's the cool thing, is that we might not necessarily see it in VO2, but at the very least, you're going to maintain your VO2 while you're improving all these other things.
Oh, you know what? That's such an important point because we can get so focused. I shouldn't say we. I can get so focused on numbers, like measurements, indicators of success or health, whatever it might be. But that's such a great reminder that it's never really about one number. It's all
No,
of the things that contribute to that. And there's all types of measurements. Yeah, that's a really good reminder.
and let's talk about what VO2 is. We gave you the definition, but what it really is, it's a snapshot of today, where you are today,
Yeah,
but it's a reflection of the last 3 months, the last 6 months, the last year, like your lifetime of what you've done. So you
right.
can't just go and lift weights and expect to change your VO2. You can't go for one walk or one run and expect to see changes. They're called VO2 max intervals for a reason. If you want to improve your VO2 max, you have to challenge that energy system, that
Hmm.
training zone, and you have to be intentional, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
if we look at zone 5, also known as VO2 max, and for you, that's a heart rate between 168 and 172 beats per minute. The RPE is 17 to 19 out of 20, also dubbed as very hard.
Yeah.
So for you to be intentional to improve your VO2 max, you have to see God at least once a week. You got to go to that point where you're like, this sucks.
Go to the front, go to the front. Go to the We're still at 19? 20? Okay.
I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And then do it again.
Great. I
So,
can't wait.
so a VO2 max interval could be 2 minutes of the hardest run you can possibly do. And it's not that hard, because if you think about it, we got you up to 7.5 miles per hour and you
Mhm.
held that for 3 minutes. That was your VO2 max. So after a good quality warm up, making sure the muscles are firing, you've got your quads, your hamstrings, your core, your glutes, everything is turned on. You've got a little bit of heat built up, so you've done some low intensity work. Maybe you've gone and done some movement activation drills. So again, the muscles are firing. Then you're going to get on the treadmill. You're going to run as hard, as fast as you can for 2 minutes. You're going to then walk for 2 to 3 minutes. And you're going to run for 2 to 3 minutes as hard as you can. So you're going to go back and forth, back and forth. And 2 minutes is kind of what I'm saying because we know you can do that. But there's nothing stopping you from getting on and going at 8 miles per hour for 1 minute. And then walk for 2 or 3 minutes and then get back on.
Yeah.
But that's how you're going to see improvements in your VO2 max. So we're going to add to the story.
Okay.
So we said 80% total training volume should be zone 2 or less.
Yeah.
And then 20% of total training volume should be zone 4 or higher. Right? So your VO2 max intervals, once a week, twice a week, depending on what you're doing, is part of that 20%. So to improve your VO2 max, you need to do that hard stuff. But to be able to utilize that VO2 and take advantage of it, that's where you need to do the long, slow distance stuff. And the long, slow distance stuff is where you're going to make improvements in your recovery. So the more zone 2 stuff you do, the quicker your heart rate will come down between those VO2 max intervals.
Right. And when we say 80-20, I often wonder about this, but maybe it doesn't even matter. I think, okay, are we talking about mileage or are we talking about duration? Like
anything, however you measure your training volume. So it's just 80% of what you're doing should be easy. 20% should be hard.
One of the things that you said a couple of minutes ago that made me smile was about so many things can influence your VO2 max, your sleep, your diet, all that. And so the morning that I came for my test, when you did my baseline blood lactate level, it was high. It was high, like you were asking me a little bit about, okay, how did you sleep? What, and then asked me what I ate. And so one of the things that we realized that probably what I chose to eat that morning was not a great idea. I think I had toast, peanut butter, and honey.
Score, and so you sitting there, we had a measure of 1.8 millimoles per liter. So that's just a measure of concentration. So then I always have to ask, what did you have for breakfast this morning?
Yeah, so timeout, interruption there. That is actually probably one of the best things you could have eaten on the day to do a max effort test because it gave you the carbohydrate, it gave you the protein, it gave you the fuel to be able to do what you did. It came out in the measurement.
Yes.
And so I think if I think back, I think we came in at a resting lactate of like 1.8 millimoles
I think it was
per liter.
I think it was 1.8. Yeah.
Yeah. And so in resting, like you or I just sitting here this morning, we're probably sitting around anywhere from like 0.8 to 1.1 millimoles per liter. So that's again blood lactate concentration. But you came in hot at 1.8. And so as we started the test, we then got you down to like 1.6, 1.4, and I think we finally got you down to like 1.1.
And so that lactate's already coming down.
Yeah.
Which is like a normal resting. But at that point, I think you were actually running at like 4.5, 5 miles per hour.
Yeah.
Which was neat because again, when you think about what it takes to burn that off, that sugar, that like bring that lactate back into the system, utilize it to put you into a resting state. When you came in, you were 1.8, and now you're sitting at, was it 4.5, 5 miles per hour, I think it was, and we got you down to a resting. So it just shows that warm-ups are super important.
Yes. Yeah.
What you consume is also really important because that comes out in different ways.
Yeah. And the other thing that may be good to eat on a day that you're coming to do a VO2 max test. But the take home message to me was, oh, I often have that for breakfast, even on days when I'm just gonna
sit around and not do a whole lot. And so
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think
So
it's a good reminder about what you feed yourself and to think about your activity level. Yeah.
absolutely. And so on the days that you're not doing any form of intense exercise or maybe even no exercise at all for whatever
Yeah.
reason, eating protein first thing in the morning
Yeah.
will do your body so much better in terms of how your body's actually breaking down what it is you're consuming.
Yeah.
And so protein is a building block, right? It helps with recovery. It helps build, maintain muscle mass. Carbohydrates coming into our system, so bread, honey, even like cream that we put in our coffee, or maybe even sugar, those Tim Hortons double doubles, which I know are pretty popular. That's just sugar getting dumped into our system. And if you're not
Yeah.
using it to create energy for the purpose of doing exercise and
Right.
movement, it's just going to get stored as fat.
Yeah.
This appointment also included a body composition test, which was fascinating to learn about.
Technology it uses, it's called BIA, so bioelectrical impedance analysis. And
Okay.
it's basically, it's a scale. So you stand on it bare feet, and then you hold on to the handles as well. And it sends a small electrical current through your hands, your arms, your upper body. And what it's really looking for is the rate of electrical conductivity. So what that means is that fat is an insulator. So it will actually slow down the speed of the electrical
Oh,
impulse
okay.
being sent. And muscle is a conductor, and it will speed up the line of current that's going through your body. So if you've got more fat on your body, adipose tissue, it will slow down the current. If you've got more muscle, it will speed up the current. And so it's
Right.
really cool because it can also then detect any muscle imbalances between left and right. It can look at the composition of fat versus muscle you've got on your body based again on that rate. And because it's whole body, meaning you're holding onto those handles and you're standing, it has enough sensitivity to pick up the current in your upper body and lower body. You can take that information and go back to and be like, am I in a healthy percent body fat? Do I have enough muscle mass? Do I have a breakdown of visceral fat, which is the bad fat that lines all your
Right.
organs? Or is it good fat, stuff that we need for insulation and protection and cushion?
I don't think my issue is not enough body fat. I think I
But
make
some runners find themselves in that situation. They become
yeah.
fixated, they start to starve their bodies and all sorts of other things.
Thank you so much. I have like a gazillion other questions, but I
Ah,
could talk all day. So this has been fabulous. It is if there are people in the local area in Nova Scotia to let them know where Cornerstone is and what you can do there.
Cornerstone Naturopath Clinic, which is located in Upper Tantallon on the Peggy's Cove Road. They've done a really great job of creating this like well-rounded multidisciplinary clinic where they have people like myself, exercise physiologists. They've got osteopaths. There's physiotherapists, massage therapists, obviously naturopathic medicine, doctors. So I do testing there usually once or twice a week, depending on the time of year and what my commitments are with family and work and whatnot. But it's a really great way to educate the general public, again, whether they're athletes or just folks that are health conscious and want to live a really long, high quality life. So there's a lot you can do with this
Yeah.
information, whether it's occupational or health or if it's fitness. And so if there's anyone in Nova Scotia that wants to benefit from this type of testing, they can just look up my profile on kinesicsportlab.com. But it's also on the Cornerstone Naturopath website as well. Yeah.
That's fabulous. And like I said, I've gone now twice, and it is such a great experience. And one of the questions people often ask is, well, what's the difference between what you get on your watch and in the clinic? And there were differences in both heart rate and VO2 max, the numbers. But in addition to that, it's just such an all-round, I don't know, like just all-encompassing experience, because you have someone coaching you, and when you're doing the test, pushing you to go as far as you can, which sometimes doesn't happen if you're out for running by yourself. And then just to understand your own data and to have your own markers of your own physiology is just, yeah, I just find it so valuable. It has been so helpful to me. Like I said,
You know, coming into this video and coming into this whole testing process, I think I was looking and so focused on the numbers, what my VO2 was, what the heart rate zones were going to be. One of the things that I realized through this entire process is that it's never about one single number. It's only when you understand and look at all of the data together, the VO2 max, the heart rate, resting heart rate zones, lactate threshold, blood lactate levels, pace, distance, all of that. That's the full story only when you put them all together. One single number never tells the story. This was such a fabulous experience. Yeah, I kind of feel like I should do it every year. We'll see what next year brings. I'm Angela, and this is Lead Your Living. Keep moving. Another thing I should add is, if there are mistakes in this video, the mistakes are mine. It may be how I piece some pieces together of the video. This video is not advice. I think that goes without saying. The numbers that we're talking about are my numbers from my specific test, my specific physiology, not for the general population. This video is just simply meant to be for education, reflection, and learning. That's it. Definitely not advice.